guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Danielle with Damn Fancy Creations. Today we are switching it up a little bit and I am not actually doing a tumbler tutorial. I am going to be sharing some silhouette secrets or tips and tricks that I use. I know a lot of us, me being one of them, have switched from Design Space to silhouette software within the past year or so. And a lot of people have asked me, how do I do this? How do I do that? Such as tracing or, cutting images out or knocking images out or offset or all these different things that Silhouette has to offer. This Silhouette software does have a lot more things that you can do with it than Design Space. And it's something that I picked up really quickly because to me it is something very similar to Adobe Illustrator. It has a lot of the same things that you can do and a lot of the terms are actually the same. So I am going to share with you guys just some of the basic things that we can do in Silhouette that you may not be aware of, and they are very easy to do. You just have to know where to look to find them because it is a lot of stuff. So if you guys are ready to learn the Silhouette basics, let's get started. Alright guys, so the very first thing we're going to do is just go over some different functions that Silhouette offers. So the very top one is basically just your page setup. You can change the sizes that you want. I change mine if I'm going to do print and cut versus cutting vinyl. You guys can see they have different mat sizes loaded. And the letter is what I would use for print and cut, which we'll go over later. But since we are going to be doing some basic functions, we're just going to stick with the 12 by 12 vinyl cutting mat for now. The letter is what I use for printable vinyl because it's about the same size as a regular sheet of paper. And this little butterfly guy is the image trace panel. The half circle is the image effect panel. Then your basic text panel. And the next one is the transform panel. Then the replicate panel. The modify panel, offset panel, pop out panel, which I don't use. The next one is a rhinestone maker, which I also don't use. There's a few of them that I don't really use, but this puzzle one is pretty cool. And these remaining ones, you guys can play with them if you want to. I don't really use them. But at the very, very bottom, we have our warp panel, and there are different ways to warp images or text and things like that. And then if you go over to the left side of your screen, you have other basic features where you can edit points of an object, you can draw lines, make different shapes, freehand, your obvious text, erase, and the knife tool. And now we are going to do some basic fonts. So you're going to click on the font panel and type out your words, whatever you want it to say. We're just going to type out a little phrase. I typically like to do my phrases in different little text boxes versus spacing them out. That way I have more control over where I'm going to put them. And then you can kind of move them around freehand wherever you want them to be. And I'm going to go ahead and select them all. And I like to change my colors just so I can see them more clearly. And we're going to do the outline in blue. So I'm going to come over here to the text panel and change my font. I'm going to go ahead and change all of it to the same font. I'm using Merry Christmas. It's one of my favorites to use right now. And I'm going to enlarge this for you guys. So you can see the blue outline is basically where it's going to cut. And this is why we always want to weld our letters, because you guys can see these little blue cut lines. They will cut right through your vinyl because your machine is basically looking at these as individual letters. So we need to weld them together so that the machine cuts around all of the little letters instead of cutting through them and you have little weird pieces of vinyl in your phrase. So you go to Object, Modify, and Weld. And then you can see all those little pieces are gone. So the cut is going to be all the way around the letters instead of cutting through the letters. This is something you definitely want to do when you are cutting out your vinyl. So we're going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to change my font again to Pen Setter. I also really like this font, and I'm going to show you guys how to use the glyphs, because some fonts come with different glyphs and a lot of people don't know how to use them or how to access them in Silhouette. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So I'm getting this all arranged again how I want. And I'm going to change this W. So I select this W, and the second little letter on your panel opens up the glyph panel. And you can scroll all the way down and up, and these are all the letters that you have access to. So you just select which letter you want to replace it with. So we're just going to change a few letters around here. And I really like using glyphs because it can kind of change your font, make it fun, so it's not always the same. And it's super, super easy to do. I like that Silhouette has everything just right there in your panel that you're working with, so you don't have to open your font book on your actual computer. Everything is just right there for you. And you can always, change them if you don't like the ones that you selected. And not every font has this. It will tell you when you purchase the font if it comes with glyphs or an alternate alphabet that you can use. A lot of them have little swirls and hearts or symbols or things like that that you can use. But this one is strictly just different fonts or different letters. So that is how you use all your glyphs. So I grouped all of this together. And I always group it when I go to cut it out. But if you ever find that you want to space your letters out a little bit more, you can always go to Object and Ungroup, and it will ungroup all of your letters. So if you want to move one over a little bit or move one up a little bit, or if it just connects funny and you want to move it down, then you can do that super, super easy by just ungrouping the word. So yeah, pretty easy. And then I will come back up here and I will weld everything together or group it all together because none of these letters are touching. And I will move it back up to where I want it on my little quote. And group everything together once more. Shrink it down to size. And then you come up here to the right and click on send, and that is where you will be on your cutting page. And you can cut by line or by fill color. And you can select your material that you are cutting on. All machines are going to be different, so you may have to play with them a little bit. I typically cut all my vinyl on matte vinyl. I will usually cut it on blade 1. The speed I usually do 5, and the force I usually do around 12 or 13 for regular matte vinyl. And I only do 1 pass. And now that we learned how to do our font, we are going to learn how to offset now. So we're going to work with the same phrase. I like to change my cut line and my font line to the exact same color when I'm doing my offset because it just helps me see it a little bit better. So we're going to click on the star with the outline. This is where you can offset or do an internal offset, which I don't typically use. I really just use the offset. So you click on the offset button and you can see it's really just a pattern. It's transparent color. So I always come up here and select a contrasting color so I can really see that offset and how thick it is. And then you can come over and make it as small or as large as you want. I usually do mine on a phrase around 0.05. And when you get it to the width that you want, you basically just hit apply. And then you can come over and you will see that we have the offset and you have the original font. So this is where you will cut out both pieces separately and stack them together when you go to apply it to your tumbler. Tracing an image is one of my favorite features to use in Silhouette. I use it almost daily. So if you don't know how to use it, it's a really good feature and I hope that this helps you guys out. It's this little butterfly looking image. So I'm going to bring in a monogram that I imported from my phone. And you guys can see we have to get cut lines around this monogram. So how we do that is come over here to the trace panel, select trace area, and make a square around what you want to trace. And I'm going to bump the threshold all the way up This just helps the lines get a little bit crisper. And you want to trace, do not trace the outer edge because it won't get all the little elements. So if we just hit trace, you guys can see, or trace the outer edge, it just traces the outside lines. It doesn't trace anything in the center. So we're going to go back and hit trace. And this will trace all the little pieces that are in this monogram. And I'll come up and change the color to black. And now we have the exact monogram that was pictured, just without the white background. So a problem that some people run into is tracing an image with a white background because it doesn't quite work as well. So I have a little trick that I learned to help kind of get around this. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like if you just try to trace it as is. So when we go to trace this image, the machine does not pick up the white background. So it will not produce cut lines around the image. So even if we hit trace outer edge, it still just kind of traces the darker parts of the image, which we don't want. So what I will do is make a copy of this image, which I drew on my iPad, by the way. And we are going to invert the colors. So come over to this little half circle panel, select invert, and we are going to bump the colors all the way over. And that darkens his background, making him easier to trace. So hit apply, and now you have this darker version of the image. So you can open the tracing panel again, select the darker image. I still bump that threshold all the way up, and then trace outer edge. And I'll show you guys why I make two, because even if you try to invert this little guy, he is still not quite as white as he was before. That's why I make two copies. So I just delete him, and you still have your outline there. So to make sure I have it perfectly straight, I come over here to the transform panel and center everything up. And then I will group the cut line and the image together. So that way you have your white image that is now outlined perfectly to use it for print and cut. So now that we have our image ready to print and cut, I'm going to show you guys how I set up my print and cut page. So I will come over here and select the page setup like I showed you guys in the beginning. Scroll down to the letter option. And then we have to put the registration marks on the page. This is how your machine is going to know where all your images are on your page. So currently they are off. So we are going to select Cameo because that is the machine that we are using. And you guys can see those little registration marks pop up. And then I move that little arrow all the way over because it pushes my registration marks back some, so I have more of a working room for my images. You can also add this little barcode if you just want to print a bunch of pages and then cut them later. It's a pretty cool feature. I've used it a few times. So your machine keeps a record of that barcode and you can scan it and it will cut it out without having to print it right then and cut it. It's kind of neat if you want to look into that. but we're just going to set up a regular print and cut right now. And you can put these little images as close to the red lines as you want. I'm going to shrink this little guy down a little bit so they fit well on the page. So there you go. They all fit pretty well as long as they're not overlapping. I also like to turn off my grid when I'm doing this. That way I can really see the lines a little bit better. And now we are ready to print. So what you are going to do first before you send it to your Cameo is go to File and Print. And this will actually print it to your inkjet printer. And then once you have it printed, you will go to Send. And it will cut out the image that way. And I like to, if I'm using printable vinyl, which is usually what I do my print and cut, I will select printable vinyl. I edited mine a little bit, my actual printable vinyl setting. Sometimes you have to play with it to see what works best for whatever product that you're using, but I usually do mine on force 24 because I want it cut all the way out. I don't want it kiss cut to where the backing is still attached to the vinyl. And once you have all your settings in place, you just hit send and it will cut it out for you. I have seen several people that have issues trying to get their print and cut to work correctly. So one thing that I do is calibrate my machine. So you basically just right click on the Cameo image and hit calibration, and this page will pop up. So you're basically just going to print the test page, and it will print to your regular printer. The green squares will not show up. When you go to print, those are just there for reference. And you are basically going to load this into your Cameo. You're going to line up your blade on each green square, and then you will hit calibrate. And you have to do this for every single one of these crosshairs, so it can take a little bit of time. You move your blade with these 4 blue arrows. When you click on them, it will move your blade up or down or over so you can get it right on top of this little would-be green square. And you basically line up your blade, hit calibrate, and your machine will cut those little X's. Then you move on to the next one, hit calibrate, and it will cut on those little X's. So that way you will know if your cut is off or if it's on, and what adjustments you need to make, if any. So hopefully calibrating your machine will help get those print and cut images on point. And this is another feature that I have been asked about a lot lately, and it's basically just taking your image and putting it into another shape. So I am going to bring in a shape or an image from my computer. I'm going to use one of my YouTube covers because it's handy right there. And we are going to cut part of this image out in a heart. So I have, several people have asked how you get an image cut out in a square or circle or diamond or oval. So this feature is good to know. So we're just going to come over here to the shapes and make a heart. And again, I always like to fill my images, like my offsets, just so I can see where exactly they are on my page. So now that we have our heart, now I'm just going to kind of put it over the image where I want it to cut out. And we are going to select the shape and the image, go over to the modify panel, and all of these little things are going to pop up, and you're going to select intersect. And it basically deletes everything but what is behind the shape. So there is your image in the shape that you want. And you can do this with any shapes, any image. It's not super special. And you can also offset the image if you want. You just select the shape, select offset, and there you go. So you can put your image in an outline, just something fun to do. I know a lot of people use these for picture tumblers. So I'm just going to back everything up and show you guys that you can do this with just a basic rectangle if you want to. So we're just going to come over here to the shapes, make a basic rectangle, fill it in, match it up with where you want your image cut out, select all, intersect, and there you go. Super, super easy to do. And then you can come up here and add your cut line to this image. So if you want to print and cut the image, you can do that as well. And now we're going to learn how to warp. So I just have this basic square, and we are going to add it to a tumbler. So we're going to open the warp panel, click on the cup image, select conical warp selected objects, and then you're basically going to enter the measurements of your tumbler, and you will see the shape start to change. Now you can do this by typing it in, or you can move the little dots that are actually on the cup. I like to type it in because I can get more accurate that way. And once you have your dimensions in, then you can see that your square is warped, and then you will hit apply. And it is that easy, you guys. Now you can warp things for skinnies, for modern curves or Ozark trails. That is something that I don't think is going to be possible because those tumblers are completely different shapes. With this warp feature in the Silhouette software, you can basically change the top and the bottom and the length of the tumbler. You cannot add a middle section that is different. So I'm going to show you guys how to warp text now. So I'm just going to type out my name, change the font, again, we're going to change the colors, And you want to go ahead and size it to the size that you want. And then we are going to come down here to the warp panel again. Click on the cup image, click conical wrap or conical warp selected, shapes. I forgot to do that first this time. That would help. So now you can see that your shape is beginning to be warped, and we are just going to start changing the dimensions. And warping names are good for tumblers like wine glasses, where the top is a lot skinnier because it curves the font just slightly. And you can even move the name up the cup so that it gets a better warp. And once you have your dimensions in, you can hit apply. And you guys can see that the name is slightly curved. So that way when you apply it to the tumbler, it will be straight. So those are our two warped images. And sometimes you may have to play with them a little bit. I sometimes have to go back and edit my dimensions slightly. You can also do fun things with text in the warp panel. And you can even edit these dimensions. If you click on them, you can move the orange dots to make certain parts wider or skinnier. They're just something fun to do. And this next feature is really fun. I have never personally used it, but I would want to if I was a kid. It would be fun, just be a fun little craft for kids or a classroom. And this is basically where you can turn any image into a puzzle. So we're just going to load this image again. And then we are going to come over to the puzzle panel and select puzzle selected shapes. And look at that. You see the cut lines pop out. So this is where you would send it to a print then cut again. Or if you just wanted to load cardstock in this same shape, you could do that. Or I'm not really sure what people use for puzzles. But you can adjust the rows and the columns. You can randomize the puzzle shapes. But yeah, I always thought this was kind of fun to do. So now that we made all these projects, we need to know how to save them. So you can save them to the hard drive or to your library. So if you want to save it to your Silhouette cloud, you go to Save to Library. And this is where I have most of my projects saved in Projects Designs or User Designs. And you can save all these different little projects. You can come down here and change your name. And then you will hit OK. And it will save your project to your library. If you want to save it to your computer, you go File, Save As, Save to Hard Drive. And this is how you can save your projects as SVGs or PNGs, JPEGs, and then you can upload them into Design Space or other programs if you use other programs to cut out your projects if you do not have a Cameo. So that's pretty much how you save your projects. So this pretty much wraps up all of the Silhouette basic functions that I can think of. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something from it. I know several of you guys have switched over from Silhouette from Design Space like I did. It did not take me very long to get the hang of the Silhouette software, so hopefully it won't take you very long either, especially if you are new. But thank you guys so much for watching. If there's another feature that I did not cover and you would like to learn how to do it, please ask in the comments or find me in my tutorial group on Facebook, and I will be happy to help you learn more. Thanks, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, be sure to catch the next tutorial coming up. If you want to learn more tips and tricks, be sure to find my Damn Fancy tutorial group on Facebook. Thanks, guys.